All right, folks, good afternoon and welcome on back here this Monday, October 25th, shortly after 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. And of course, this time of the day, welcome on back for our afternoon meeting. Hopefully, we're good to go across all ends, across Facebook Live and YouTube. And of course, for all of us live inside the trading room, welcome on back. We have Ron, we have Ray, we have Terrell and Tina as well, just before talking about Tesla. Great to see everybody. And hey, we got to make it quick, folks. We do have class coming on up later on this afternoon, right at 3:05 Eastern time. I'll be continuing the phase one stock course, simply talking about trend recognition, identifying a stock's trend and how to work with it. It sounds relatively easy to say in concept, but when everything is moving, when the bright lights are on, I feel like a lot of us, and I'll be the first to admit myself too. A lot of times we end up kind of letting that slip past us. We got to keep it simple. So we're going to break that all down coming up at 3:05 Eastern time. And well, speaking of which, right now, we'll talk about perhaps this stock's trending class, the BKKT, up just about 170% right now. I mean, needless to be said, we'll put this on the main list, just to see if it can continue pushing up, breaking all-time highs. Very similar to the PHUN trade, very similar to DWAC, just in terms of it being, an extremely volatile stock, a runner. I don't know if this is a short squeeze as much compared to the DWAC or the PHUN trade, but it's just to say, I mean, either way, however long the stock's been listed out there on the New York Stock Exchange, which really isn't that long. You could say practically the past year, maybe even less. Yeah, right around late November, it became listed on the New York Stock Exchange. So, within a year's time, this stock ended up gapping up, dropped back down. So I'm sure there are some shorts getting crushed on this trade, but nonetheless, man, this stock ended up squeezing all the way up to 28 and pulled back down. I remember distinctly, although 28 was the high, and perhaps we'll talk about this in class later on. We talked about this topic, at least in the morning class earlier today, but, we had a major resistance, and it goes to show it on the chart, although 28's the high. It's holding pretty much as the real strong level, 27. And there was actually a ton of volume that got filled on the ask there. And although, you would like to think that would lead a stock to run, well, if it doesn't run, be prepared. It's going to run, but just the other way. So it ended up actually false breaking above 27. And then from there, slammed back down and got halted even. So before this thing ends up going up to 30 or 35, I think we had said that was the next big level, at least from that point. This thing's got to break over 27 strong. All right. So we'll put it on the list for right now. Obviously, be very careful on it, given how thin the order book is right now on this trade. All right, we got the warrants on the top of the gainers list, actually, although this stock's up 160%, the warrants. And we talked about this on Thursday, Friday from last week, too, with PHUN and BENE and, DWAC and all of that. The warrants here are much cheaper in relation. It has as thin of an order book, though, looking at the TradeStation matrix. So I'd be just as careful on this compared to the equity, even though this one's a lot less expensive. Listen, if you ended up doing well on this one compared to the equity, then I'm sure you'll be more focused on it going into the close. I would just rather follow something that has a more liquid order book, consistently tighter spread, and something that's making as good of a run up here. Speaking of runs up, talking about Mark, a stock that we ended up actually going over in class earlier today. We're going to follow up with this stock. So if you joined me early on this morning in the phase one stock course, I got a real good story for you on this trade. I ended up doing really well on this stock. It was probably one of my best trades across the whole day. I stopped trading before class started. I came back. I got chopped up on a couple of trades here and there, like -3, -4, -2, break-even trade here and there. So I started to get back some of the profits. And that was up until this thing ended up making the exact move that we had talked about from the 10:30 Eastern time class earlier this morning. So if you were with me in the morning class, I'm going to follow up on this stock with you heading into the close. It's, trying to make the squeeze back up, so to say. So, this one's still volatile. And I say that in a good way, given that, well, hey, at least this stock has a really liquid order book, consistently tight spread. And that's all I ask for right now. So the Mark trade, I don't mind putting on the main list, in hopes of that beginning to make a bounce or recovery. BE also. BE just seems like a very tradable stock still. It's getting another push back up, ended up bouncing off of roughly 27.30 and back over the 50-cent level, at least for right now. So I would say this. I mean, I guess we still have an hour and a half left, hour and 25 minutes, but it ended up dropping off from 1:30 Eastern time. If this wants to go, again, it's got to get going soon, TikTok. So definitely I'll put it on the main list, see if this one can end up giving us one more push. Wow, really? XCLA 190. I took my eyes off this stock for a little while. And the XCLA we're really familiar with. Just look at the daily chart. You could see it ended up making a huge spike for us going back into late March, early April, then once again going into the beginning of July. So again, you hear me say this quite frequently if you follow me here in this afternoon meeting, and that goes across all ends. But hey, if this stock can make a fraction of the type of move that it made back then, it would be a home run hit. Right. So, there you go. Nice push up today. And although it's like kind of slow, it's much slower than the mark and the BE and obviously much slower than the BKKT. But, I'll slip this on the list, kind of be near the middle or near the back end perhaps. But I like this one still. Now, keep in mind, something like this is not necessarily a swing trade type of stock. That line, if the stock can make a fraction of the type of run up it made back then, it would be a home run. Well, look at the ALF trade, right? I always like to show this stock because it ran for us going back into the end of June. I said that here. I said that exact phrase right here and also right here when we ended up day trading it. Look what happened to it. So be careful. Don't recklessly turn a day trade into a swing trade just for no given reason. Looking for VISL, for as much as this moved up, dumped all the way back down below 2. Not really too keen on that. I'll tell you, one stock I completely botched today, as well as I did this morning, and Mark ended up doing really nicely. The Genius trade I botched because, it popped up really well. I looked for a pullback. I got in at 153 or 154. I got out at 153. All right, that's not the part I botched. The part I botched was the fact that it broke under and over 150. I jumped in from 150 or 151. It started to inch up a tiny bit. I got out right here. I took like a penny gain or whatever the hell it was. And got to trust your levels, folks. I even said that to a student, Brian, earlier in the trading room. And, sometimes you got to follow your own advice. But nonetheless, this stock ended up, beginning to make a nice squeeze back up. It was building a pennant. So that was partially the reason why I got out. I was a little scared of the potential snap down. Figured it wasn't worth it. Certainly wrong there. So, right now, Genius, we're also really familiar with the stock. And I could also say the same thing on this, as I said earlier. If this stock can make a fraction of the type of move that it made for us, not even back then, I think back here. Back in 2020, got to go back on the weekly chart for this. We ended up trading this stock back in what was it, May time? Yeah, late May, early June, and ended up completely exploding back then. I think the news at the time was like this new cartoon network that was oriented towards children. And believe it or not, this is actually like a funky name to toss in there with all of that. But you can look it up. I just remember this like the back of my hand. Arnold Schwarzenegger was like the lead ambassador behind it. When the news came out, like, that's weird, the Terminator. But nonetheless, hey, I don't know why that allowed the stock to pump from like 2 to 12, but it goes to show that you can't really dictate your move, your decision based off of news. You might think that might not allow the stock to make as big of a run, and then look what happened to it. And then vice versa. You might have a stock that came out with what you would think to be incredible news, and then it just does jack. So we're going to talk about that at least later on this afternoon in terms of it just, simple trend identification, not going against the trend, and making sure you're avoiding catching the falling knife, right? Sheesh. Wow. Tesla is running. Oh my God. I mean, listen, how often is it for Tesla to be up on the up 13+%, number 43 on the gainers list? Even that's extremely impressive for $1,000+ stock now. What's the latest on this? Today's Monday. Like, I don't know, would their earnings get leaked? Eli buy more Dogecoin? No, actually, I know the news. I know part of the news, believe it or not. Now I'm remembering. I'm just going to say first from earlier today. That's right, Brian. That was it. They're renting $100,000 or 100,000 vehicles to the company Hertz, or they're selling them, whatever it may be. But that was news from the weekend. God, why the hell is this thing completely squeezing right now? Got a whole bunch of headlines here, folks. I don't mind showing you right now just to show you what I'm looking at, but I'm not going to recite each and every little headline here on Tesla. This is everything since 12:30. So I don't know what the deal is outside of the Hertz partnership, which is pretty significant, but damn, that is a hell of a move up either way, whether you own the equity or have calls on it. You're doing pretty good, I'd imagine. So, good for you there. Maybe you could try and trade some of the other EV stocks that could move in sympathy. I'm not trading $1,000 stock, I'll tell you that much. I'll be in class. I'm not trading anything, but you know what I mean. Brian, I saw you pick up 25 cents on Canon earlier today on the run up. It's squeezing up a little bit, tiny inch by inch here right now. If it was closer to the highs, I'd be more keen to put it on the main list, but for right now, I'll pass. BENE, not much happening there. CLSK is near the highs, but the volume is like kind of dead. Trading about 4,100 shares a minute, not really a whole lot. RDW, not much happening there. I did not mean to click this one, but I'm happy I landed on it, I guess. And Moho, I've never traded this stock before. I actually meant to click on a stock that my scanner refreshed on me. It was the HUT trade, I think. HUT. It was a Bitcoin mining stock I wanted to look at. But Moho, I don't know. It's a cheapie. Making a nice push so far. HUT's near the high of the day, I guess, is the point in time where I'll check in with Riot and Mara, and also the point in time probably where I'll tell you that these will not likely, if ever at all, run into the close as much as we would hope for them to. Riot's not doing well. Mara, I guess, making a small bounce off, prior resistance. That's interesting to see. But the HUT trade in particular, out of all of the, crypto stocks, Bitcoin mining affiliated stocks, well, now it's actually pulling back down over the last bar or two, believe it or not. But, just before it was looking relatively healthy. I don't know. If we feel a need to come back to this stock, then we will. We'll hop over to the losers list in between. I'd imagine Tesla's carrying up the market entirely, and then otherwise, any other stocks that it's affiliated with within its sector. EYEN, believe it or not, folks, looks interesting. Looks pretty flat. I mean, moving slow. The part about it that I don't like, I'll give you the part about it that I don't like because everything else lines up. It's only trading about 2,000-3,000 shares per minute. Like, that's pretty weak. The other one that was on the way up, whatever that stock was, CLSK, that was trading like 4,300 shares a minute, much less. I mean, it's near the lows. It's cheap. It's shortable. It's not too close to the ground floor, in my opinion. But I don't know. Right now, I'd pass on this. Got Pinterest on the way down, or just flat right now, pulling back at least down off of like 51.20-ish. Not much else, at least in terms of familiar names on the loser side here, folks. We're making great use of time. We'll go through crypto here in just a moment, or at least Bitcoin for that matter. Go over the Bitcoin dominance chart. I showed that, I think, last week or the week before, rather, but we'll go to Bitcoin altogether. P Trader says a lot of EV stocks got lifted up off of Tesla. So let's look at that first, then I'll jump to crypto. Just kind of rattle off the top of my head here. Nikola, it's like flat, near the highs, I guess. Workhorse, eventually, this thing is going to make a monster squeeze. I'd imagine it too, and that might be 3 months from now, folks. But just simply put, looking at the range in which this stock has made, just let alone the last 52 weeks, it's going to make a hell of a pop. That could be 4-6 months from now. That is not swing trading or investment advice, but it is certainly something that I can give you as day trading advice. Don't forget about this stock. Kind of like IQ to a degree, making a really sharp bounce back up over the last couple of weeks. Right now it's flat. This is also not an EV stock as well. Look at NEO maybe. NEO moving kind of all right. It was looking pretty good just up until about like 5 or 8 minutes ago. FSR, that's a good one. P Trader on YouTube joining us there. FSR is probably the best looking one. More within our price range, just dropped, but it tested a major resistance, $15. It's up near 7% still. There you go. Nice call. I like this one. I like it. I like it a lot. All right, let's see what else we got here, folks. Making good use of time. XPEV from Troy. Forgot about that one, but that one's just a little expensive, like NEO, but also really flat. Remember, Solo was a name back in the day. AYRO was a name back in the day. CLSK is one that is EV related, believe it or not, Clean Spark, but it's just too flat. That was the one I was saying. It was like really dead in terms of volume. Another one of us joining us on YouTube right now saying AEVA reaching its resistance line. It's up near the highs, but it's just too slow. It's like watching the grass grow in this trade. So, hey, I said that about a stock I had up there just a moment ago myself. So you got to be picky and choosy. I got to make sure the stock has at least some sense of activity to it. It's at the highs, which I appreciate, but it's not really trading much volume per minute. All right, let me just jump to Bitcoin here fast, folks, then we'll kind of wrap up. One thing I forewarned us going into the weekend was simply the fact that we're going to get a bit of a pullback. My belief, and I follow, a gentleman on Twitter and all over, and Plan B, I'd mentioned him to you, his projection for the October close, and this was dating back to June 20th of this year, was at 63,000. So on Friday, when this thing was ripping on the way up, I said to you folks, be careful. This thing's going to pull back. We still got about like 8 days left, 9 days left till the end of the month. So it can make a shake back down to 58 first, touch the 100 moving average EMA on my 6-hour graph, and then bounce. I didn't exactly do that, thankfully, which, I don't mind at all. Bounced roughly from like under 60,000 briefly, dipped under and over 60,000. I did not add more. And that's all right. That's good to say. But if it ends up dropping back by any occasion down to the 100 here, I would look to buy myself. That's what I said going into the weekend, but I didn't buy altogether. So hey, that's fine. Again, we'll see what happens. I just want to show the Bitcoin dominance chart. This is something I showed relatively recently for the first time. It just goes to show Bitcoin's strength compared to the other altcoins, Ethereum, Cardano, everything else that you could name, Phantom, Solana, etc. But it's to say, though, that using the Fib extension levels that I drew up here, well, it's been holding above the 50% line pretty well, and that's like projected to be like $40.23, the price level. So it's to say, at least, we saw a squeeze up. It hasn't broken above resistance just yet, right around 48 or so. If it ends up breaking above 48, that's a pretty interesting pattern because, again, this traces Bitcoin's strength or weakness compared to the other coins out there. So if you're into Cardano or Ethereum or, everything else out there, and you see this pop, then Bitcoin's making a much bigger move compared to, the others. So that's something to take note of. If you're in the altcoins, you would want this to drop down, and over time by, hopefully, I'm just shooting from the hip here on this completely, but perhaps in 1 month from right now, perhaps see this begin to drag back down, or 4 to 6 weeks from now and break below support. That could lead to a huge run up on all of the altcoins. But for right now, Bitcoin moving back up here, testing 63,000. So I'll bring up the Fib extension levels on the Bitcoin chart going into either Wednesday or Friday this week. We'll talk about the projections that I laid out from a week and a half, 2 weeks ago as it began to push back up here. That's it. That's all you got from me here today, folks. If there's anything else that ended up making a big move, as I kind of jokingly say, as I like to flap my gums about Bitcoin and whatnot, but let me know if there were any. Later with a scalp on the BKKT. She got about 40 cents on that, I think. Pixie made a small little squeak up, second win type of move. I think we're kind of late to the party on that one already. If this ends up showing more signs of life on the way up, I wouldn't be surprised if Rich calls it out. It would be a good call out if we see more signs of life. From Mikey Sam Plug at the high of the day. Yeah, but as a $34 stock, I would want to see it move a hell of a lot faster than this. This is like a grinder of a trade. And I would say the same even if it was FCell. FCell is making a better spike up even. If I were to trade one over the other, it would be FCell, given the price. For, put in 1,000 shares on the plug stock to only grind up, 5 or 8 cents or 10 cents. I'd rather trade the Mark stock, making the same move in, half the time and 10 times cheaper. You know what I mean? So you got to be picky and choosy. That's why I said, at least on the EVs, Neo looked kind of all right, but that's a $41 stock. I would rather trade the FSR if I'm going to follow, the EV stocks for that matter, right? With the way Tesla's moving, right? Skills someone brought up earlier, so I may have skipped that one over or skipped over that one. My apologies. Up nearly 10%. So made a nice run from earlier today. Again, we talked about this at least from the end of last week. So, it might be easier for us to acknowledge now at this point with it up another 9-10% today. But looking at this chart, very similar to the Workhorse trade. For as much as Workhorse ran up, then back down, the skills is going to get squeezed up pretty nicely at some point in time. And again, that move started already from last week, continued into this morning. Would it shock me for this to pop higher? No, but for right now, I'm going to hold off on it. It ended up just beginning to pull back a little bit there. So I'm going to hold off on this trade, at least from putting it on the main list. But, hey, if you did well on this stock from this morning, I wouldn't be shocked if you personally decide to follow it. From Buster here at the close on YouTube. I got to wrap up, folks. Got class coming up in just about 10 or 12 minutes. Also wondering about the BENE trade, complete pop and drop type of move. Easy to say here, but it's to say that this stock already popped and dropped back on Friday last week, and then it ended up opening up by this morning's market open nearly at the highs. So if it wasn't going to pop up and continue to make that run, kind of like the BKKT at least, then it wouldn't shock. It's like the same thing with Mark. Really quick, folks, just on Mark, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but Mark was up like 300% in pre-market. What the hell? Like, how often do we see a stock up 300% in pre-market? I mean, actually, more often than you probably think if you're just joining us for the first time. But either way, for a stock that was that extended in one morning's gap or one morning's pre-market, it's going to pull back at the market open, at least to a degree. Is it going to completely dump all the way down? You don't know that, at least in the moment, by the time the market opens up. But for a stock that's up 375%, this thing's going to drop at 9:30. You can't buy at 9:30 on a trade like that. So that's where I say, at least kind of looking to see what happened on Mark as it continued to pull back heading into the early afternoon. It's no shock that it ended up making this move. But again, we're going to talk about this move coming up. Like, we're not going to trade this in class, folks. Our focus is kind of be more so on the PowerPoint that I'll be showing. But I'm going to dip into the live market where we left off on this Mark trade. So I want to talk to you about the trade that I took on this stock. I ended up picking up about 32 cents on it. Relatively easy trade, and that's the more important part there. So hey, as a bronze student or above live inside the cyber group room, I look forward to speaking to you folks coming up inside class. From he is re-asking about the Pixie stock here at the bell. Or after the horn, after the bell already at this point. But Pixie, not worth watching. Already made its second win type of move here. It doesn't shock me to see it drag back down for right now. REDU, last one from Norman. That's it for real. And thankfully, I caught this here. I can't keep going, folks. But REDU looks good. I like this one. Definitely going to put it on the main list at this point. So good call, Norman. Great catch. And we would have, put this on the list either way once I jumped off the mic. So great call. All right, folks. Hey, if you're on YouTube Live or Facebook Live or YouTube, I'll never get it right, but I appreciate you sticking with me here each and every day, each and every afternoon. If you have any questions that you would like to send over my way, feel more than free to do so. You could send it right to my email address there, josh@ctutrading.com. Otherwise, if you're ready to join us live inside the cyber group room here, there we go. Buster, I appreciate that. I didn't mean to click your comment, but I may as well re-show it. Like and subscribed already. I appreciate you, Buster. But if you're ready to join us live inside the trading room that we have, feel more than free by going right down to the link on the banner below the stream there, just to get yourself started. But for all of us otherwise, I know that Rich is going to get his screen sharing. He'll be on the mic coming up in about 7 or 10 minutes. Give him a few minutes to get himself set up. But otherwise, I look forward to speaking to all of our students coming up in this afternoon's class. Take care.